Welcome, everyone, to episode 2 of Single Malt Strategy. I'm your host, John Marciniak, and joining me is Matt, the Historical Gamer. How you doing, Matt?
Doing great. How are you?
Not bad, not bad. So, just going to dive right into it. I wanted to know what kind of games you've been playing the last week.
Couple of games. I've been playing a little bit of Cuban Missile Crisis on my computer, but then I've also been diving a little bit into tablet strategy gaming. I've been playing Twilight Struggle, which is on Steam, but it's also on the Apple App Store for iPads.
Oh, yeah, I've been wanting to pick that up, but Heroes of Normandy is literally sucking up all my time. How was, by the way, that game Twilight? Because I've seen the screenshots for it, and I'm about to purchase it, but I wanted to get your review on it.
It's interesting. I'd hesitate to give a review right now because I had a friend who shot me a message on Facebook, and he's just like, "Hey, we should play a game of Twilight Struggle," and I realized I had bought it, but I hadn't played it yet. So I said, "Sure," and I'm in the process of getting my nation thoroughly embarrassed because of how bad I am. But it's quite a good time. I don't think there's enough Cold War games out there, in my opinion. I wish there were more. But it's a board game conversion, a lot like Heroes of Normandy. I don't know a ton about Heroes of Normandy. I've played it a bit, but my understanding is that it's basically a board game that was converted into digital, and Twilight Struggle is the same thing. It was a game that I believe was published by GMT Games, which is one of those really, they're kind of the preeminent board game publishers, at least as far as my knowledge is concerned. I don't know a ton about that space. But they're one of the preeminent board game publishers, and they turned the game into a digital version. It seems like a true conversion. Basically, you draw cards and everything like that. You electronically roll dice. So very much a board game, and very well suited to the iPad, I feel like. That's one of those. It's an interesting thing. I think for some war games, there's some pretty big handicaps if you're trying to play on a touchscreen. But for board games, I think there's a really natural fit there, and it seems to work really well.
Yeah, I've been noticing there's a lot more. What's kind of interesting is a lot more. I've been noticing there's a lot more. The big developers are getting into the tablet space the last couple of years. Shenandoah Studios, I think, almost was kind of like one of the first ones that started off with. I remember Battle of the Bulge, and then it kind of took off. And we have a lot of other developers, GMT and Matrix Games and Slytherin are publishing a lot of tablet games. And I've been playing Heroes of Normandy, and it's a really great game. I'm about a couple days from doing a review on it. But honestly, I did my first impressions, and I put in my first impressions of the game that I believe the game was kind of a steal. Because for the amount of content that Slytherin, and I think it's Mad Cat, or I forgot the name of the studio, but I think it was something with cat inside. I want to give them some recognition, but I can't think of their name offhand. They put so much content in it. They put a full-blown single-player, multiplayer, with, I believe, asynchronous multiplayer over numerous devices. Then on top of that, they have a full-fledged editor, then a wiki on top of that, and it's only $14.99. I was kind of like blown away, but how much stuff they put into it.
So is it a full-blown port then? Have you played the PC version? Because when I played Heroes of Normandy, I didn't play it on iPad. I played it on the PC. And
no, I haven't played the PC version. Before my review, I'm planning to compare the two. But I can't see anything that's significantly taken out. I can't imagine how much more the desktop version would have, because there's 6 different sections of a single player. The multiplayer then is a full-fledged editor. So even if the PC version had an extra couple of single-player functions, to me it's not like, it wouldn't be like losing out on too much. I honestly think like this game by itself can like add literally dozens, maybe even hundreds of hours of content and gameplay for the player. And for $15, and the beautiful thing that I love that what they did is I got on the iPad and I was like, man, I don't bring my iPad with me wherever I go. A lot of times, I'm running around this and that, so I usually just have my phone on me. in a place where I'm like, damn, I'm going to be here for like 20, 30 minutes, and I have to wait. And the beautiful thing is they made an iPhone version of it. So if you ever go out in a spot where you need to play, kill about 20, 30 minutes, and it syncs all your content to it. So I really appreciate when developers do that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I have Twilight Struggle, but I have it on my iPad. I don't have it on my iPhone. I tried to find it to download it to my iPhone, but it doesn't look like they have an iPhone version. It looks like it's tablet only.
Yeah, I noticed some developers do that. Unfortunately, I mean, it's up to the developer, I think, because they probably feel it would be too small for an iPhone. Because I've talked to some developers and I said, why don't you put your games on the iPhone? They're like, well, it's not going to be small, because the screen was so small. They figured they were like, hey, we're not going to give you the best experience. I remember, I think it was Shenandoah Studios when I was talking to them, because they came out with the Bulge for the iPad. And then I told them, I was like, I would love to see an iPhone version. They actually told me when I went to their studios that they were like, we're actually working on one. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Well, and I wonder if that's going to start changing. The iPhone screen used to be, like 3.7 inches, and now with the Plus version, you're pushing 5 inches. It's almost as big as kind of the iPad Mini. Not really, but I mean, it's getting there where the screen difference wouldn't be that gigantic. So I wonder if maybe you'll start to see that kind of that difference between the two kind of fade away. Certainly seems to be more fading away on Android, but I know a lot of these developers tend to focus more on iOS.
Yeah, the Android. I mean, you got some big. I mean, like the Android phones. Like, I mean, you have the Nexus 6 that's full 6 inches, and I've there's another manufacturer out there that has like a 6.5 inch phone or something like that for Android. I thought that was huge, but
I think it might be the Note, but I could be wrong on that. The Samsung Note.
The new Note they just announced the Note 7, I think, like 2 days ago or a day ago. It's 5.7. That one.
It's only 5.7. Could have sworn it was bigger than that.
I mean,
Anyway, that's neither here nor there.
But I mean, honestly, like, I think for an iPhone, in terms of porting a game over from tablet to iPhone, you could do it to the 4-inch screen, but I mean, you would have to have you're gonna need a stylus at that point, because or you have to redesign the entire interface, because it would be a challenge. For the regular 6, which is 4.7, and the Plus, which is 5.5, it's especially on the 5.5 inch. You can play tablet strategy games on a 5.5 inch phone and no problem. 4.7, you're going to have some trouble. 4, you better get a stylus, or you better have really, really small fingers.
But the game seemed pretty robust to you. It didn't seem like they were compromising anything to be on tablet.
No, I mean, with Heroes of Normandy, I know with Battle of the Bulge, I never ran into any issues, but they redesigned the interface. Heroes of Normandy, I have a 4.7 inch screen. And I I was playing it for about 15, 20 minutes. It was a little bit of a, not struggle, I wouldn't say. I had to get used to it. And the iPhone 6 is a 750p, I believe, because it's not 720p. I believe it's 750p display. So it was not more of the screen size. It was more that, unfortunately, 720p is barely HD, so some of the letters and some of the graphics weren't up to that perfect crispness that you get on an iPad or a 1080p display.
Okay, but like the quality of the game, I guess the content, at least on the iPad version. I know you had some reservations on the phone version, but on the iPad version, the content, the quality of the game, you didn't feel like you were compromising to play on a tablet. It felt like a kind of a full-blown PC type experience.
Oh yeah, and I mean, Slytherin's been doing that lately. This game feels basically a full I mean, it really feels like a desktop version of the game. They did the same thing with another game that I got from them, which was Commander of the Great War. Which when I was playing it, I was like, "Geez, man, this is a desktop game right away." I mean, and I was playing on the iPad. And,
that's on iPad? I didn't know that. I did a 30-part series on my YouTube channel for Commander of the Great War. It was pretty well received, and it's a lot of fun, but I guess I remember thinking this would probably fit pretty well on tablet if they could get it to run well, and it's encouraging to hear that they did.
Yeah, and I really like the way Slytherin is because Slytherin and Matrix games are really investing into the tablet market for the iPad market. The On Android, they mentioned they're not getting as much what do you call it traction there because for numerous reasons. But on the iPad market, they're focusing. But the one thing I wanted to talk to you actually last week about it was that what I've been noticing is there are a few exceptions like Slytherin, you have Matrix that are investing in tablet market. I noticed a lot of developers are not some strategy game developers are not entirely focusing on the tablet market as they used to. I mean, I feel like when the iPad came out and you had all these tablets coming out, it was a race. Every developer was like rushing to make apps for it because the marketplace was exploding. But I've noticed in the last couple of years that it's kind of stagnating a little bit in terms of like it's morphing. Like we had the games come out, and you would pay like $15 or $10 for an iPad game, and you would get you would get the title. But I noticed things are morphing now to subscription type games, or in-app purchase type games, and I feel it's affecting the tablet market.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I know when you mentioned it was $14.99, my brain kind of went, "Whoa, that's kind of a lot for an iPad game." I mean, it's encouraging that it's a full and a robust game, but I just wonder if the market, if the users on the iPad are conditioned to paying nothing or paying so little that $14.99 prices them out of it. Not because it's not worth it by any means, but just because people aren't used to spending that kind of money on an iPad unless it's an in-app purchase. Like, I mean, I'll drop like $80 if I want some more Pokeballs for my Pokemon Go, but I probably wouldn't pay to download it in the first place.
Yeah, I noticed that a lot of people are more comfortable with in-app purchasing than buying a game full price.
And I wonder if. So, do you know, is not out of the park? Good Lord, is Order of Battle Pacific, is that on iPad yet or no?
I remember being on the Slytherin website. I remember they said it's coming, and I believe it's coming this year.
Okay, because I wonder if that's why. I don't know if you noticed, but on Steam, when Order of Battle Pacific came out, what was it, a year ago? It was like a $29.99, basically a prettier version of Panzer Corps with a few enhancements made by different developer, but same sort of concept as Panzer General. Turn-based, text-based, somewhat abstracted puzzle-type strategy game. And they added a bit more depth to it, and I really enjoyed it. But I was curious if it made it to tablet, because what they just did earlier this year, a couple months ago, is instead of charging you $29.99 for the base game, they actually made it free to play. I think the only thing they gave you was the tutorial, which I'm a little bit hesitant. I'm curious, not my business. I don't have information on this. I don't know if it's successful. I'm in no way affiliated with it. But I wonder how successful that would be if you're just giving someone a tutorial. But the point is, they made it free to play on Steam, and if you want the tutorial, you can play that for free. If you want to play the American campaign, or like the original Order of Battle Pacific, you can buy it as an in-app purchase. And to me, that seems more fitting with something that would be on like the Apple Store than it would necessarily be something on Steam. Although maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I know when it went on there, I saw my videos on it got a huge surge of views. So I was nicely placed for it, but I just wonder from a business perspective if Steam works that way, or if that was a move to get out ahead of switching it over to Apple, maybe in a way that they think may be more successful.
So the tutorial is free to play on the iPad or on the desktop?
So I don't think it's on iPad yet. That's why I asked you, because I haven't seen it on iPad. But on desktop, on PC, they made the game in Steam, a free game in Steam, where if you go and you download the game, it's free, you go into the game, and then you want to play the actual, like, let's say you want to play the Rising Sun expansion, which is the China scenarios, or you want to play the Pacific, which is like the American scenarios or Japanese scenarios, then you have to in-app purchase the different packages within the game. So like Winter War, which covers the Finnish Soviet War, would be its own package that you would buy, but you wouldn't buy it till you're inside the game, basically. So the only thing you get for free is the tutorial, which kind of lets people try it out. It feels like an iPad move to me. It doesn't feel like something that's typically on desktop where you're like, here, play the first 6 missions, but not really missions, and now if you really want to play the game, now buy it. That seems more like something that you would see in the iPad.
Yeah, I just checked on the website. It doesn't look like it's on the iPad yet. Yeah, I mean that's a very I wasn't aware that they did that, and I noticed the whole market is changing. This is very interesting time. We have the television market about to change, and a revolution happening there, and the card market changing, and now we have the entire market with apps changing alongside it, where everything is going to more in-app purchasing and subscription rather than full cost. But I feel like seen by a lot of I don't think Apple or Google saw this coming. I think I remember a couple years ago Apple was going to release and try the app out. I remember I think it was might have been iOS 6 or iOS 7. I forgot what it was. But basically you can rent try out an app for 24 hours, play the full game, and if you liked it, you get to you pay for it. If not, you just choose no, I don't want this app, and you wouldn't be able to play it anymore, and it wipes off your phone or a tablet. But they never implemented that, and I feel like people were just moved away from paying $5 or $10 or $15 for apps, and they're like, well, I don't want to pay for this app. So now developers are like, well, we'll give it to you for free, but we're going to charge you for little things. I remember when Paper came out, Paper was free, and it was on the iPad. It was one of the first really amazing drawing apps on the iPad. And it came out for free, and you can draw with a pencil or something like that. But if you wanted a marker tool, you would have to pay $3 for that. Or if you wanted a coloring tool, you would pay another $4 for that. So they kind of saw that coming. But I don't know how I feel about it, because honestly, if the market stayed the same back 5-10 years ago, right, when the iPhone and the iPad came out, and you bought the app, let's say Order of Battle came out, right, and I'm just using this as an example. Slytherin says, all right, we're going to charge you $15 for this game. Everything's inside of it, right? Everything. And you pay $15, you have the game. You have a world of content. But now I feel like the whole model is switching, and I feel like what's happening is they're going to give you the game and the tutorial for free, and then we're going to have the Finnish campaign that's going to be $7, and if you want the Pacific campaign, that's going to be $15. If you want the European campaign, that's going to be $20. So I feel like in the end, I think the price for the average user is going to be higher than actually paying for the game, full price, And I feel like this is not just applying for just Slytherin, but I feel like this is going to go across every app and every game that we're going to be playing in the future.
I don't know if the price is going up. I think the price is going up for the whales, if you will. So I think if you look at mobile apps or mobile games in general, you've got a small percentage, and I'm sorry if it sounds like I have a cold. I've been sick for the last week or so, but you have a small base of users that are really funding the app. If you look at that, the vast majority of people on free-to-play games are not spending anything. You've got a handful of people that are driving the game forward, and it's, to be fair, I don't know if it's that much different than what's happening, like what Paradox is doing with a lot of their games. If you look at Paradox, they really fund their games off of DLC. So you do have an upfront cost. So like Crusader Kings, you've got a $29.99 upfront cost. But then at times they'll drop the price to something ridiculously low, like $4 or $5, and then they'll try and lure you in with all this DLC that can go with it. And they just keep releasing DLC pack after DLC pack after DLC pack. But realistically, no one's buying those DLC packs all the way through. Very few people were buying the game when it came out and continue to buy every single DLC pack as it comes out. At least that's my impression. I could be totally wrong. But what's really happening is it's the hardcore supporters of Paradox, the hardcore Crusader Kings 2 fans, who are still playing the game 3 years later, who are really funding that development and funding that product. And I feel like you have the same thing evolving in the app market. The thing that I worry about is I almost feel like because we're conditioning people, and I say we as not being involved in any way in pricing on anything, so not really we, but I feel like developers are devaluing their product. It's good for the consumer today. It's good for you and I today because they're dropping the prices. Maybe it's free, maybe it's a penny or 99 cents or whatever. And it's good because we can get into a game real cheap. But then they've got to resort to these other kind of tactics, be it, breaking the game apart into like 50 different packages where, a small percentage of people are really going to pay for all of it and most people won't pay any of it or will pay very little. Or whether they have to, kind of make you feel like you have to pay to win. I kind of wonder where the market's going to go. If you tell people your product is free, sure, a ton of people are going to download it, but what does that do for the next guy who wants to charge $1 and it's a superior product, but he's charging $1 and people don't want to pay that? I guess it makes me worried. I could be totally wrong. This could be a great thing, but it always makes me worried when, I don't know if art, a lot of people have a problem when you call games art. I do think that at least within a certain level of games, there's certainly a degree of creativity, and I think you could call some games a work of art. But I feel like when artists or creative people devalue their own product, maybe it gets them more eyeballs, but I don't know if it's good for them or for the industry in the long term. This is a bigger discussion, but you could almost view Steam as like the Walmart of the gaming industry, or Apple, the iOS store or the Google Play Store as gigantic Walmart-type organizations that are having a huge downward pressure on prices and may not be in the best interest of the consumer long-term. Great for everyone today, but what does that do to people 5-10 years from now? Or is there going to be a market where I can go out and create an app and actually get compensated for it?
I get worried about the Apple just a couple months ago unveiled a subscription model, I believe at WWDC or I forget, well, it might have been the earlier event, but they announced a subscription model where, and this is worrying me because we've been noticing everything's going to a subscription model, like Office went to Office 365, Microsoft's pushing that. One of my favorite apps now, which is 1Password, which is one of my favorite apps, they're going to the subscription model. And the thing that I worry about is we're going to have all our apps, instead of buying it one time where you're going to pay $5 for this or $10 for that and you have it for life, now you're going to be paying $3 a month or $2 a month or $5 a month. And then you add that up for 20 or 30 apps and it almost comes out to be a cable bill at the end,
Sure, although at least on that end, if you're not playing the app anymore, you should cancel the subscription. I think the theory that a lot of those guys are working on is you sign up for it and you forget about it. I did that for my MLB TV package. I signed up for it last year. It's like $100 or whatever. It gives you access to all the games, or all the out-of-market games. And, I forgot about it come this year, and then all of a sudden I look at my statement and I've got a $100 charge, and, it wasn't something I'd intended to carry over. Now, luckily for me, I moved out of Wisconsin and into Illinois, so my team, I'm a Brewers fan, and they're a Wisconsin team, so I was now out of market. So I now really do want that. But if I had still been in Wisconsin, I wouldn't have wanted to continue it. And I think to some extent that's one appeal to it from a developer. The bigger concern I have is for all of us. What happens when Steam, God forbid, someday, 5, 10, 15 years from now, Steam goes out of business? What happens to everybody's games? Are they going to say, sure, here you go, you bought all these are all yours, make them available offline and have some kind of limited download? Maybe. But they're not really required to do that. What happens when, all these apps you buy through the App Store, and you've been carrying them over for years, and it may be less relevant on mobile, at least from most of these, but in games they're not. So, let's say Apple completely gets rid of the App Store and introduces something different. Now, what happens to the 20 or 30 strategy games you had on your iPad? Do they just, are you not able to download those and switch them over to the new version when it comes out? The concept of ownership is going away, and as you said, it's a rental model, but I think that's probably a bigger discussion than we have time for today.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I mean, honestly, I think with Steam and and Apple, and I'm probably gonna get heck for this, but I mean, I'm thinking they're just too big to fail. I mean, Steam right now is, I mean, everybody goes to Steam. I mean, the amount of players that go on Steam is millions a day, that are active players on a daily basis. And the amount of purchasing that's going on in Steam with in-app purchasing and all this stuff. And I don't know, I can't see Steam failing, but, you never know. I mean, we've seen it in 2008, 2009 with banks falling, or, they're saying they're too big to fail.
Well, and let's face it, no video game company is ever going to get bailed out by the government. Video game company goes bankrupt and millions of people don't lose their homes. So, it's a different industry, and I think you're right. I don't think Steam's going anywhere anytime soon. I'm not trying to be an alarmist, but I do think that plenty of businesses get real big, get real successful, the market shifts, they don't catch up, and then they're out of business, and then there's people who are, left hanging. I think the bigger risks are for things like EA Origins or Ubisoft's, like online purchasing, those kind of things where maybe a much smaller user base bought into it. But, then they're the ones who end up getting screwed when Ubisoft says, damn, it's too expensive to keep this service up that no one's using, everyone's using Steam, let's shutter it, and now what happens to everyone who's bought their games through that? But yeah, I mean, I guess maybe shifting back to strategy, because, this is the Single Malt Strategy podcast, so I think we're discussing something that maybe is beyond just strategy. I'm just curious, do you have any thoughts on how this specifically will affect strategy games? Because I've got some general worries, but I'm not sure if it'll affect strategy games. I do have some concerns with charging $15 for an app. There's another game I really like. It's called Out of the Park Baseball. I would call it a strategy game. It's a sports simulation, but it puts you in charge of kind of being the GM of a major league franchise in baseball. And, they've got it's a watered down version, which is kind of frustrating because the PC game is incredibly deep and rich. And I wish they would do what Matrix does and just port the full version of the game over onto mobile. But they sell their mobile game for like $5, which I think is probably a safer price. I wonder if a game like Heroes of Normandy, what kind of level of success that's going to have for 15. Is Matrix just targeting their core audience, or are they trying to expand beyond that? Because, again, who's going to spend $15 on an app? I don't know. I don't have the sales figures. I'm sure they've got a reason for charging that. But I wonder if those kind of premiums can be kept up as people are becoming more and more accustomed to paying nothing, or paying nothing till they get into the app. And that's where I kind of wonder, is Order of Battle Pacific, is that an experiment? Are they going free to play as a way to figure out if that works well for them in the mobile space, and maybe they'll go that way with their future games? I don't know. I mean, obviously it's not out on mobile yet, but you said it's coming, so.
The thing that I honestly think that every day people need to see, people devalue their device. That's the problem. Like we there are a lot of people that I've met when family and friends when I was working at Apple, customers and stuff like that are comfortable spending $100 on on a desktop or a laptop application. So like Office, whatever it may be, right? They wouldn't spend that same $100 if they were getting the same app, did the same thing on a phone or a tablet. And I always ask them, I'm like, why? It's the same app, does the same exact things, provides you the same kind of functionality. And they said, yeah, but I'm not paying $100 for an iPad app or an iPhone app. And I always that always gets to me, because we're in a big transition now. Like, everybody is switching from laptop and desktop to a more mobile platform. The whole industry is changing, where people are on their phones, 95% of the day. You're on a tablet probably like 40 or 50% of the day, and a laptop probably 5 to 10% of the day. And this, I remember, I think that I was reading this on The Verge or something like that. But everything's switching over, and going back to our earlier discussion, I just worry that, like, what I really want deep down inside is to, because we're going to more mobile society, that I want to see strategy games go from the desktop platform or desktop laptop platform to a tablet and iPhone platform, where we have first party games, first release games. Like, I'll give you a good example, like Hearts of Iron 5. Let's say Hearts of Iron 5. I would love to see Hearts of Iron 5 come out for tablet and iPhone the same day it would come out for a laptop. a reorientation saying, well, the tablet market and the phone market is going to be just as important as our laptop market because everybody's switching over. I noticed that because people are not comfortable with spending the same $50 or $60, whatever the game will be priced on an iPhone or a tablet, developers are just going to say, well, we'll just make it for a desktop because we can price it at $50 on the desktop. We can't do it on the iPad or the phone.
Yeah, but I mean, I think you're right. I think a lot of it comes down to, we say, consumers are devaluing the product because they don't have to pay anything. Really, the people to blame at the end of this are the developers. They're the ones who decide how much they're going to sell the product for. And if they turn around and say, you know what, I need a ton of people, so I'm just going to sell it for a penny or nothing, in the long run, they're screwing everyone, all their themselves and their competitors over if that changes the market and now no one can make a living doing it. But again, I think probably a bigger discussion than warrants for this podcast. We could probably talk about this for 4 hours. I think the thing that I find interesting is you say everyone's switching over to tablets and to phones, and I don't know if that's true. With the dramatic success that Steam has had over the last few years, I think that calls that into question somewhat. I don't think Steam would continue to see the increasing number of users, the increasing seeming success, because they're not a publicly traded company, so we can't see what inside their books. But it seems to me like they continue to grow year after year after year, and I could be wrong here, but I thought Ian from Matrix said more or less in the last Home War Gamers event that they had been planning on, tablet and iOS being a much bigger part of their business, but things had kind of stagnated something. I could be wrong. I'm not sure exactly if that's what he said, but I could have sworn I heard that at some point.
Right.
I'm sorry?
I remember reading something. No, I think you're right. I think I remember reading something like that.
And I mean, I don't remember if it was, still a really sizable percent. That's beyond what we have access to. But to me, that makes me question, is that really where the market is going? Or was it something where it was like, holy crap, this is new, we can do everything we want, and then people decided, you know what, pressing my finger around on a screen and telling units where to go is not the best way to play. So I think it's worth saying that, there may be a perception that that's where things are going, but I don't know if that's reality. It may be too early to really know. Tablets are young. And especially tablets capable of playing war games. Like if you tried to play that on the iPad 1, I'm guessing it would not handle it. And let's keep in mind how young this technology is. The first iPad came out. I want to say it was the first year or second year of President Obama's presidency.
Well, no, it was 2010. The iPad 1 came out.
Okay, so yeah, second year of Obama's presidency. The first iPhone came out in George W. Bush's last or second to last year as the president. Yeah. So this technology, like to us, it seems like, holy crap, this stuff's been around forever. There's been one president in the United States since the iPad has existed. That's how new this stuff is. So,
but the really interesting thing about like these devices, like so when the iPad 1 came out. It wasn't really a powerful device, but if you take the iPad 1 in 2010 and the iPad, let's say Pro that they just came out with, the horsepower, the Geekbench score on it, the first one I believe had a Geekbench score, I believe because it was A4, it was a 400, and that's kind of like a point system. So they calculated at 400 in terms of Geekbench points. The current Pro is a Geekbench score, I think around 5,500. So
yeah, but none of that matters if developers aren't developing to that. So,
that's true. But I mean, when it comes down to it, I mean, that iPad Pro, the tablets that are coming out, even for Android too, are as powerful as like i3 Intel Core chips that are coming out on laptops, and in some cases, better GPUs than the internal ones that Intel ships with some of their products.
Yeah, but again, I guess my point is I don't see the market as shifting as much as maybe we thought it would. And I think it's still the technology's still very new, and developers are still trying to figure out how to get it to work in a way that they can maximize a lot of this stuff. But I think we're kind of drifting off topic. As far as So in essence, it sounds like you're concerned that the market is devaluing itself. People are being conditioned to paying nothing, more or less, and strategy games future on mobile is somewhat up in the air. At least that's what I'm hearing. That's what I feel. So maybe I'm imposing my beliefs on you. I think there's a lot of great stuff, a lot of great content that's coming out on mobile, but I also wonder how sustainable that is with the current pricing structure in place.
Yeah, it's definitely up in there, I think, and probably in about a year or two we'll find out. But I'm very thrilled that Slytherin's investing in it because, honestly, like Commander of the Great War, you have Normandy, Heroes of Normandy. Yeah, I really enjoy playing these games on my devices because, let me tell you something, when you're stuck at the DMV and you got an hour to go and you're like, oh, man, this is going to take forever, just whipping out your iPhone and playing a couple of rounds of Heroes of Normandy and boom, your number is called out is... I'll tell you, it makes the time fly. I love that.
Except then you didn't realize your number was called, and now you're stuck there for another 2 hours because you're too busy playing the...
2 hours enjoyment, I will say that.
I can think of better places to play on my tablet, like maybe my couch, but...
That's true, but, I would love to see, honestly, and if anybody from Paradox is listening to this, I would love you guys to put Hearts of Iron on the tablet or the phone. I would love that. That would probably... I would probably sink in like dozens of hours just playing that.
Well, some of our listeners might feel that the game's been simplified enough where they could do that. And I don't mean that in a positive way.
Yeah, I haven't played it as much recently. I've been playing a lot of Stellaris recently.
I enjoyed Hearts of Iron 4 a lot. I think we talked about it in the last podcast, but I never really played any of the Hearts of Irons before 4, and I jumped into 4, and I really enjoyed it a lot. But I can see it was simplified, but I think they did things in a lot of positive ways. But again, not coming from a background of having a ton of experience with it, it's hard for me to say, like, oh yeah, this is far superior, or they made the right choices, because I don't have that context to come from. But
One thing you told, when we were talking about it off air, you were mentioning that Paradox released some financials when they went public.
Yeah, so I guess we can shift gears to talking about Paradox. I thought it was interesting. So I was looking through. I'm gonna have to pull it up here. So play hold music or something, or make people
elevator music.
Yeah. So I'm waiting for you to start humming and making elevator music. I don't hear anything yet.
I'm a bad singer, so I wouldn't be able to do that.
You don't need to sing, just hum. Come on.
Let me see. What can I hum? Oh, jeez. I'm from Brooklyn. I can't hum. I'm sorry.
Come on. You're in Virginia now. You could probably sing some rebel music or something like that.
Oh, you mean the Civil War II kind of thing. I was just damn it, I had a good soundtrack to play. But while you look for, I guess I'll probably talk to you about my Hearts of Iron feedback in terms of the game. I like it. It's just, there are certain things, like as other players were saying, that the complexity, the in-depth gameplay has been taken out. Like, you can't make cores, you just have like army units. The one thing that, and it sounds like a small thing, and I put this on my review, is like, if you're playing, you're doing the airplane section, the air section. I know in each airfield I have like 1,000 planes here. I like that part. I know how many planes I have. That's something they didn't do in Hearts of Iron 3. So in the Paris airfield, I have 1,000 planes, and they're doing sorties from there. The one thing I don't know, it just bothers me a little bit, and maybe I missed it or I can't find it, but when I have army units, I really enjoyed knowing how many troops are in it. Like I have Montgomery's First Army, and they're about to go into Germany. And it has, like, let's say, 32 divisions. I would like to know, like, all right, these 32 divisions, there's 500,000 men in here. And, you just had a battle in Amsterdam, and that resulted in 20,000 Allied casualties. I like learning. I like knowing those kind of figures, because it kind of brings you immersion to the actual thing. And, a simple bar graph where it says that unit's at 70%. I don't know what 70% is. Is it 70% 7,000 troops? I don't know. So use these artificial values because it takes that immersion factor out. When they added the immersion, the numbers to the airplanes, and I had 1,000 planes there, and then a week later I'm down to 200 planes, that's like, wow, I just lost 800 planes. This has changed the whole war,
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like, honestly, when they've done that, I feel like I lost a bit of immersion into the gameplay.
Okay. Well, I did look up their financials, and I think it's been interesting because they've been public for a little bit over 2 months now. And I was just kind of curious, what's the... So I think we joked, or at least I mentioned last video or last podcast that, I don't know if we can call Paradox a niche strategy developer or like a small-time strategy developer. And to be honest, I think that's true. Because I was just digging through their financials and... God bless anyone who tries because it's all in Swedish. But I'm assuming we don't have a ton of Swedish developers or listeners on the podcast. But if you are listening, I appreciate it. It's not meant as any offense. I just don't think there's many Americans who know Swedish. And I was digging through and kind of doing some conversions and their market cap. So the value of Paradox is listed at 6.23 billion Swedish currency units, which if you adjust that to US dollars, they're worth $727 million. That's when I believe they went public. I think that's increased. They went public at an average share price of, I think it was 33 SEKs. So they went public at roughly $4 a share. They're up to almost $7 a share after 2 months. So they've almost doubled. Not quite, but they've almost doubled their shares. And assuming this document I'm looking at is based off when they went public, then that more or less means that they're worth almost $1.4 billion now. Which is not niche by any stretch of the imagination. It's not
at all.
It's not a small time operation. They're a very successful company, and it's interesting. I mean, I don't want to bore people with digging through the depths of the financials, but I think if you go into their annual summary, and I'm looking on the stock exchange they're listed on because they don't really list this on their website. But if you look through some of this stuff, so their profit margin, their operating margin has increased from 17% in 2013 to 25% in 2014, all the way up to 40% in 2015. So what that basically means is each of the last 3 years, they have seen the expenses become a smaller and smaller percent of revenue, more or less. They're seeing their margins go up, which is always really good. If you look at their revenue, it's even a bigger shift. So 2013, they were at about 202 million. I'm using Swedish currency here. I'm not going to convert everything. 2014, that dropped a bit to 177. 2015, they almost quadrupled. They went all the way up to 604 million. From 177 to 604 million. I think this year they're going to have an even bigger year. If I had money to invest in Paradox, I was trying to figure out a way. I was looking, when they were announcing they were going public at like $4 a share, more or less. I was like, God, I would love to get in on this. I feel like there's an opportunity here because City Skyline was, I don't think people realize this. It was a huge success. They sold over 1 million units of that and over 200,000 within a week or so of its launch. It was a very successful game for, I think there's like 180 employees at Paradox. It's not a big company. If you're a company and you're worth $1 billion and you only have 180 employees, that's, there's not a ton of overhead there. They're not developing, first-person shooters that cost $300 million a game to make, and you've got to sell 20 million units to break even. They're, with all due respect to their games, they look beautiful, but they're not incredibly high production games. They're certainly very high quality, but I wouldn't call them they're not cheap to make. I'm not trying to belittle that, but they're definitely not super expensive to make is kind of my point. And if you're a $1 billion company and you only have 180 employees, that's a lot of value at not a ton of overhead there. I'm not a financial analyst by any means.
Their games either.
What?
And they don't charge a lot for their games either. I mean, I remember correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Hearts Iron 4 was like $40, which I mean,
yeah, I mean that's like $10 cheaper than like a AAA, but I mean they charge a reasonable amount. But then you also have to factor in the Paradox model relies heavily on sales and DLC once it's in life. So there's additional cost and revenue that they generate there on the back end. But I guess my point is they between 2014 and 2015 they saw huge growth. And then I think in 2016 you're going to see a huge year. Stellaris was a big success. They said by far it was their fastest selling title through the first couple of weeks. So I kind of view that as them launching, 2015 was big because they launched City Skyline. 2016 will be big because they launched Stellaris. But then they also launched Hearts of Iron 4, which sold over 20,000 units in 2 weeks. So not anywhere near as fast as Stellaris, but still another very big ticket item for them.
Stellaris sold more than Hearts Iron 4?
Yes. Not even close. Really? Stellaris sold like 200,000 units in the first week. Less than that, within like the first 2 days. Some of that was pre-orders, but took Hearts of Iron 4. I don't know if that's really how long it took it, but they announced that Stellaris had sold over 200,000 units after like a day of it being on the market. They didn't announce 200,000 units sold for Hearts of Iron 4 until it had been out for about 2 weeks. So I'm making the assumption on my own initiative that Stellaris was much more successful. They also did announce that Stellaris was their best-selling and quickest-selling game in their history, beating out City Skyline from the previous year. So long story short, revenue between 2014 and 2015 increased by almost fourfold. Profit increased by more than 4 times. They went from 84 million profit to 341 million. Operating income went up by more than 6 times. I mean, huge growth between 2014 to 2015, and steady growth in other parts of the company for all the last 3 years. And I think you're going to continue to see that trend go up this year. I think it will be challenging, and it will be interesting to see what they do in 2017. Because they had a huge release in City Skyline 2015, huge release in Stellaris in 2016. Also benefited by the fact that they launched one of their core games for their core audience in Hearts of Iron, and that by all means seems again. Remember, let's keep in mind they're a publicly traded company, but we're all looking at this from the outside in. Seems to be a very successful launch of Hearts of Iron 4. What are they going to do? Because shareholders always have this constant desire, and it was one of the things that concerned me when I heard they were going public. Shareholders always have this desire to see the value of the company going up and up and up. And they've certainly delivered so far this year. Most stocks within, I want to say the first 6 months to a year, drop by something like 10 to 15% based off their opening price, and they're up by over 60% off their opening price. So they're having a very good first year, but I'm curious to see what 2017 has in store for them. I wonder what they're going to do. I mean, maybe they have a City Skyline 2 in the works that'll be really successful, but it seems they're in a very different strategy niche than I would say they used to be in. They're playing now to this 4K audience, and they're playing to this city management audience. In City Skyline's case, I don't think there's a ton of people out there. There are not a ton of city builder options out there. SimCity, by all means, is garbage nowadays, and that's about it.
Old. I think it's a couple of years, right?
Yeah, and I mean there just aren't games that are coming out anymore for it. So there always seemed to be a relatively large audience for those kind of games. And I think they hit on something where people kind of felt like, maybe the market hadn't met the demand, and they did with City Skyline. Stellaris is catering to the 4K market, which seems to be relatively big in the strategy community. 4K games sell really well. Sins of a Solar Empire sold over 200,000 units. I don't know what Distant Worlds sold, but when it went on Steam, it was in the top 10 for like 2-3 weeks. So it seems like Distant Worlds did pretty well for Matrix/Slytherin when they introduced it to a larger audience. But it doesn't seem, I haven't seen that level of success from other strategy games where they perennially stay, high in the rankings. So if their intent is to fall back on, Victoria 3 or EU 5 or things like that, they're not, those are more examples of Hearts of Iron. Those are not going to capture the kinds of numbers that a 4K game would. Most likely, I could be wrong. I'm making some assumptions here, some pretty big ones. or a city manager. Those seem to have more wide appeal than a war game or a kingdom simulator. It seems like city sims and 4K have a wider audience, I would say.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I've noticed, Paradox morphing the last couple of years into going from mainly strategy games, because, I mean, their bread and butter over the last, probably 10, 15 years was Heart to Iron. You had Vicky, and then you had EU and all them. And I remember,
maybe Crusader Kings 3 is coming.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I'm sure they have a flagship game, or at least one flagship game coming out next year. I'm sure there's going to be an expansion pack for both Stellaris and Hearts of Iron next year. But the thing that concerns me.
Well, they already announced the first DLC for Stellaris. I think it's just a species pack, but.
But the thing that worries me, and I could be wrong, but the one thing I don't want them, two things I don't want to see happen to Paradox. One. Right now their strategy business is probably about 50%. When I say strategy, I'm saying grand strategy business, about 40 to 50%, maybe around that, of their projects, right? The other parts, Magica and Cityscapes or City Life. I don't want the Cityscapes and Magica and that kind of genre to overtake, and that grand strategy section that Paradox started out with coming down to like 10% or 20% of their sales, or 20% of their projects, which I doubt it will. But that was one worry that I had the last couple of years. With the results you told me about Stellaris, I doubt that will happen, because if they made that much money off it, I doubt they'll make that.
Yeah, but to be fair, I mean, Stellaris is still a very unique kind of. Stellaris is a 4X sim, which. I wouldn't say anything else they sell currently fits into that. Vicky's not a 4X, not in the space sci-fi genre. Their other core games that people know them for are history-based games. Outside of Magica, I don't really follow that, so I can't speak to that. But what people know, and I think a lot of their core fan base is interested in, I think may be different than where they're seeing a lot of the success. So there's risk. I think the positive side is when they did go public, they only sold like 30% of the company publicly. So, their CEO still has 30% or so in his hands, and then they've got a key investor that's been investing in them for years at another 30% or so. So I don't, it's not like they sold a majority of the company off to public investors where they're going to have to bow to their every wish, but they do have some fiduciary responsibility now that they're publicly traded to maximize shareholder value. So even though they don't necessarily say you have to do X, Y, or Z, or we're going to replace the board. They don't have that kind of power. They do still have legal responsibility to maximize shareholder value, and that could be something where they feel pressure to shift the business to focus on these kind of big titles that have been having a lot of success. I think that would be a mistake. I don't want to see them to go that route. I don't think they will, but it is something that I do worry about a bit.
Yeah, and but I honestly, after you told me those sales figures, I doubt that. And I feel like, do you feel like Stellaris would be a grand strategy game? I mean, you feel that falls under that? Because I honestly feel it. I mean, it's not historical because it doesn't involve anything with history.
It's
but I still
definitely
feel
grand strategy. It's definitely grand strategy. Not to talk over you. It's certainly grand strategy. What it may not be is it may not be. So it's grand strategy in the 4X genre. There's no doubt about that. But I think when we say grand strategy, we have a tendency to think war game or history or Empire Sim or something like that. It is. I've seen it described as EU4 in space, and I think that's accurate. But I also think that the crowd, the audience who plays that, are not in any way similar. There's definitely crossover, no doubt about that. But I think, and again, we're making a lot of assumptions. We don't have sales figures other than what's publicly been announced. I don't know what Paradox's future strategy is. It's just two idiots on the internet rambling about what they're worried about. So join the chorus because there's millions of us out there. But I don't think the audience is the same. I think there is a segment of the audience that is the same, but I think there are very, very different wants and needs out of someone who's playing maybe not Hearts of Iron 4, because I think that's a little bit more mainstream, but like Hearts of Iron 3 fans are not the same people as 95% of people or 90% of people who jumped out and bought Stellaris. The 4K genre for space sci-fi is its own thing. People who watch sci-fi on TV are not the same people who watch History Channel. There's a lot who watch both, but the core base of sci-fi does not necessarily cross over to history.
Yeah, but honestly, I don't think after those sales figures, I really with even Hearts of Iron selling that many copies, I highly doubt they'll abandon the historical grand strategy games. Because
I'm not saying abandon, and I think it would be a gradual shift. But I guess my bigger concern is, what does this do to the direction of the company now that they have 2 years of huge success? I can't imagine. I don't have their books, but based on everything we've seen, I can't imagine that 2016 will be anything but another record-breaking year for them. I don't imagine they'll quadruple sales, but still, I think it'll be another very strong year for them. And what does that mean for 2017? I don't know what the answer to that is. And I don't know if it's another Magicka, another City Skyline. Crusader Kings is interesting because that kind of had a appeal to the mainstream in a way that a lot of their other games haven't, because there were a lot of mods made for Game of Thrones, and let's face it, Game of Thrones is huge. So maybe something like that. Maybe they go to another Crusader Kings. I would love to see another Victoria. I think that's overdue. They're still making DLC, it seems, for EU and for Crusader Kings, so I think logically the next refresh in their core game base is a Victoria 3, but I guess we'll see. I don't know. I just think it's interesting, and I think if anybody's interested in the business side of strategy, take a look at some of Paradox's stuff. Realize a lot of it's not in English, but still you can kind of wade through and get the gist of it. You look through their finances, and numbers are numbers. They don't take interpretation with language. So take a look through them, and I think you'll be really impressed. I think a lot of times, and I don't mean to monopolize the conversation here, but a lot of times we think of ourselves as kind of in our own little world. We play Paradox games, we play Matrix games, and the rest of the industry is over here and so much bigger than us, and we're just playing in our own little corner. And I think Paradox is showing that's not necessarily true, but I don't think it's because they're doing strategy better. They're doing strategy very well, but I don't think it's because they're doing war games better than others. I think it's because they've had some success outside of what their core has been, but it's shown that there is an appetite there in these kind of games, and maybe they can branch out. Maybe they can successfully expand Victoria into a new audience. But it certainly says that strategy games are successful, and 4X games can have a huge audience, and it's not just Civilization, which, by the way, another Civilization is coming out, but it's not just Civilization that can be a mainstream game and be successful from a strategy publisher.
Yeah, I really do hope they come out with a Victoria game, another Vicky game, especially if they combine the graphics and the beautiful map that they did with this Hearts of Iron 4 into Victoria, especially with Victoria's day by day, so the hours won't work. But the map was just utterly beautiful. The one thing that really bothered me, though, about Vicky 2, I really love that game. I played that game a lot. But the thing that bothered me, I don't know if you ran into the same problem, was I always had a problem with rebels. In the middle of the game, for some reason, they just sprout throughout the whole map in the United States. I would have like 250,000, rebels pop up throughout the map, and I had the army just, go around the map and having to deal with them. And this would happen like every few years, and I would have to, you would have to employ social changes and stuff like that. But it didn't. That's the one thing that really bothered me. I didn't notice that so much in Victoria 1. In Victoria 2, that always bothered me, and I hope they fix that if they come out with a new Vicky game.
Was it broken, or were you just bad at the game?
I don't like to consider myself bad at the game because I played Victoria 1 and I've played Victoria 2 quite a bit. Maybe I'm not paying attention to certain things that I'm supposed to be paying attention to. I don't know, but I always run into that issue, and I try to appease, the groups that are in revolt by appealing to their policies. But a lot of times, like for example, I might have one group that was like they want more liberty, more laissez-faire kind of policies, and I can't just change the policy overnight. Everything is grayed out. So I'm like, all right, well, I can't change this, and they're going to revolt in like a couple of years. So I guess there's nothing I can do. So you always run into those issues. And then you have like a massive war because of it, and that always bothered me. And usually that was what really just like, all right, I'm done playing the game. It's just like I'm not dealing with it.
When did you? What country were you? People. What country were you playing as when you saw that happen?
The U.S.
So what you're saying is you were not succeeding at making America great again.
Not the Donald Trump way.
I think you might need to crack down on some of those losers and bums. You need to show them who's boss. But anyway, shifting away from that, we've been going for about an hour. So I know episode 1 we ran about 2 hours. I know you got to be somewhere tomorrow morning, so probably won't go too late. But what have you been drinking?
I actually haven't drank anything today. I'm
what?
Some Mountain Dew basically. Yeah, I have to prepare for my test tomorrow morning. But yesterday I was drinking some really good beer. I usually drink El Guapo, which is a local brewery around Norfolk, and they make this most incredible IPA I ever had in my life. And yesterday I was on the shore and stopped by a bar that was there, and I was reading a book and stuff like that. So I hung at the bar, watching the sunset and stuff like that. I was actually reading. What was the book that I usually read? It's oh my gosh, I can't believe I forget the book that I normally read.
Well, you forgot the name of the podcast earlier, so not that I'm throwing you under the bus, but.
No, Battle Cry of Freedom. So I'm into the reading this book because it's the first time I'm reading it. But I sat at the bar, and I asked the girl, bring me the best IPA that you had. And she brought it over. And this local brewery, middle of nowhere, it's like this small, they have this one floor, and it's called Pleasure House. That's the name of the company. And they have a double IPA. They haven't even named it. They just call it a double IPA. I took the first sip of it, and she was just there. I was like, holy shit. I was just like, this is like the best IPA I ever had. And I was kind of like stunned. So I spent pretty much the whole night having IPAs, enjoying my time at the beach. So, but today I had to kind of take it easy because I have to do I have a physical test in the morning. So
I think you should show up to just hammered and see how it goes.
Yeah, I'm sure my instructor is probably not going to be pleased with that. I did that one time when I was going for the fire department. I forgot what happened, but I remember the night before, I went out with friends, and I had drinks, and I didn't realize my fire department test was the next day. And it wasn't until like my 5th beer down, I'm like, wait, hold on. What? I have a fire department test tomorrow. So, I got home, and that was absolute murder because you should never do a fire department entrance exam.
As long as you walk in and you're like, I didn't drive, don't worry.
No, but believe it or not, the fire department test was probably the most brutal physical entrance exam that I've ever took. More so than the military, more so than police. I mean, it was a killer. I mean, like, I think it was probably because I was hungover. That's what it was.
So it wasn't really difficult. You were just hungover. I was going to say, I can understand that might make some sense. In the military, there's a lot of stuff you have to train to do, but I don't know if you train to run into a burning building with 180 pounds of gear on your back. You certainly run through burning desert with 180 pounds of gear on your back, but maybe not a burning building with carrying someone out as well. But the other alternative is that you were just hungover.
Yeah, they were asking her like, I remember when I was when I was done with the test, and one of my instructors came over to me. He says, "Are you not feeling well?" I was like, "No, I would, I'm a little bit sick." And it's like, "Oh, okay." And he walked away because he was like, yeah, because I could sense you were struggling throughout the test. I was like, yeah, I was. I was like, I'm not feeling it. I was like, oh, okay, don't worry about it. And I didn't have the hard sell. I was like, yeah, I'm hungover. I'm really bad.
Oh, don't worry. They probably knew.
Yeah. But, I look forward to, once my test is over tomorrow night, I'll probably be in D.C. I'm going to visit a friend up there and try some of the local brews that they have over there. See if they can top what I had yesterday.
You're going to be in D.C., you said?
We've been drinking. Yeah, I was. One of my buddies is there for some kind of not internship, but NASA has him doing something. So I was going to stop by there, and he wants to go out and stuff like that. And I'm hoping DC has some good local breweries that make some really good hoppy IPAs.
Sure, they have some very expensive, high-end, whatever you want, if you want to pay for it. He works for NASA. Well, geez. Let him know that, he should give me a job at NASA, because I would love to work for NASA. I've been drinking... last time I had been drinking Johnny Walker Green. I was actually at a function. We were going to a baseball game, and we had an open bar. And usually, this organization I'm in is pretty, tight-lipped and pretty price conscious. But for whatever reason, we rented this bar, and it had a minimum, and we were nowhere near what our minimum was. So we ended up breaking open a bottle of Johnny Walker Blue Label. Which I have to say is, despite being $170 to $220 a bottle, is not that great of a blended scotch. It's really smooth, okay? So it's very inoffensive, but I wouldn't call it their best scotch by any means. I think they tried to make it too appealing to everybody, and therefore they removed a lot of the character out of it, and now it's just sort of a marketing gimmick of like, oh my goodness, it's so nice, it's the most expensive, but you're just paying because it's the most expensive, not because it's the best.
You would have paid $200 for that bottle.
I would not have paid $200 for that bottle. I wouldn't pay $200 for most bottles, but I certainly would not pay $200 for that bottle. But it was free, so, I can't complain. Right now, I guess I've kind of become a Johnny Walker drinker at the moment. I'm drinking some Johnny Walker rye cask, which is like a 10-year-old blended scotch, matured in like two different types of barrels. They've got like American oak barrels, is what they start in, and then they switch them over to something else. It's interesting. It's a little bit different than kind of the typical Johnny Walker Black, which is in that same sort of price range. It's a little bit more, but I like it. I think Green Label is still my favorite Johnny Walker that I've had, and I'd rather start drinking some single malts during the show if we're going to be calling ourselves, the Single Malt Podcast. But
I had a German single malt, German single malt. My buddy who works at Apple, he brought that over when he was coming from Greece, and I never had a single malt drink, and he gave me it, and it was really expensive. He told me it was like $180 a bottle, and I remember
German?
tasting it. I was like, yeah, I remember. I think he said German. I might be incorrect. It might be Italian or French. I know he got it when I think he stopped by Germany or Italy. But
that's weird. I've never heard of anything single malt. I've heard of single malt, but the only single malts I've ever heard of are single malt whiskeys out of Ireland. Otherwise, every other single malt I've ever heard of is out of Scotland. Scotch having to come from Scotland, but Ireland has some pretty decent single malt Irish whiskeys. So I suppose it's possible that other countries have them as well. I've never tried anything, though. I actually haven't had a single malt Irish either. But
that was the first time I tried a single malt, and I'll tell you, oh man, it felt so good. I mean, it was so nice going down. It burned a little bit, and I liked that because it kind of like it hit you with a little bit of a punch. And I remember I was just like, this is $150 a bottle. He's like, yeah. I was like, shit, man, I wish I had $150 right now because I would take that bottle off your hands. But I'm thinking about getting into the single malts. But one of my buddies, he actually told me something about he makes something in the South, and his family makes it. He says,
are we talking about moonshine? Because that is
moonshine,
not.
That's it. Yeah, that's what it is. Have you ever tried this? I never tried it.
Moonshine? I mean, no, I have not had moonshine. I was kind of joking because traditionally I believe moonshine is like made in people's like basements and bathtubs and shit. And that kind of stuff can make you go blind. Although there's certainly some less shady versions of it that have started to show up in liquor stores that claim to be moonshine, but I don't really know if they are or if it's just a marketing gimmick.
Yeah, I heard him mentioning that I should stop by a local store because they had some legal versions of moonshine. Because I always thought it was legal. You see on the History Channel and stuff like that where they go out and they try to like arrest the people and stuff like that.
Yeah, how far that channel has fallen.
I remember the first time it came out, and I think it was in the 90s or 80s. I remember putting it on, and they had nothing to. It was just like about like European campaign in World War II. And I remember watching Rommel go through the desert and white, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it. Now you can't find anything good on it.
Yeah, let's watch as someone goes out and makes moonshine, and then the police try and catch him, and it's history, really. But anyway, that's.
What happened to those quality shows? I mean, there was a couple. I mean, even the documentaries that I've seen lately, they had a Gettysburg documentary in 2013 that came out. It was one of the History Channel, or might have been A&E. I forgot which one. But they came out with it. I think it was the History Channel actually. And
they had a big one for the 150th, just like 2 years ago or 3 years ago.
Yeah. And I think this was the same one we're both talking about. And I remember they came out with it on the History Channel. I think Jonathan Frakes might have narrated it too. And they kind of like made it into kind of like an action film. Like they took out all the good history out of it and made it into like almost like an action film, like Bruce Willis jumping out of a helicopter in the middle of the Civil War kind of thing. And it just like, I was like, this is seriously what we've come down to. We were so like obsessed with to every person, like, hey, well, you got to watch this because there's going to be explosions and chopper, like all this craziness. Obviously, there's no choppers in that documentary, but like the crazy graphics that they were trying to put into it to make it seem like this was some kind of Die Hard movie or something. It really.
I think there's a balance there. I think it can be used. I think, oh goodness, it might have been 10 years ago now when which Total War was it? Was it the Rome Total War? When that one came out, I think they used that, or maybe it was the first, maybe it was Medieval Total War, like the original Medieval Total War. When that came out, they used it as an engine to use for like some historical battles. I think it was called like Great Battles or something like that. And I thought they did a good job with that, where it was, they mixed that in. But in general, I agree with you. Like yeah, we could talk for a whole podcast about what the hell's going on with the History Channel and why I'm watching Ice Road Truckers on the History Channel, or why the hell I give a damn about some. At least Pawn Stars tries to have some historical content in there about like different items and the history behind it, but I mean, in general, I think the problem was, I want to say Pawn Stars was the first one of them, and it was very successful. And again, they kind of jumped on that success, and I'm sure they had pressure from ownership to recreate that success, so they kind of started going down the reality TV show route, and it bled over into the very limited historical content they still create. It just seems like they're trying to appeal to a different audience. They didn't seem to have a problem appealing to kind of middle-aged to older audiences in the past, and maybe to some educators as well. Kids will watch in school or something like that. Now it doesn't really seem like they want to appeal to that. They feel like they have to catch the youth, or somewhat younger audiences to try and maintain that audience. But I don't know. It's certainly. I remember watching Civil War Journal or whatever, which is kind of more traditional documentary type stuff. Waiting for the bus to go to school in middle school. So it was good enough for me back then. Now I sound like a grouchy old man at my ripe old age of 29. But I don't know. It's sad to see where it's gone, but I'm sure there's business reasons behind it. It's just it's kind of depressing, and I guess that's kind of on people. I don't know. I wouldn't say people like us, because I don't really have the skill to create those kind of documentaries. But I kind of feel like it's if we want those kind of things nowadays, it's up to people on YouTube or other creative outlets who really want to see that kind of quality content be created. Since network television isn't doing it anymore.
But the beautiful thing about that is that's what's happening. I mean, I think this revolution in TV is going to bring out all these individual. If you go on YouTube now, I mean, there's some really great things out there. Like Civil War Trust is making some videos, like 4 minutes. I remember I was just watching today. It was Battle of Bunker Hill in 4 minutes, and they added some graphics, a lot of history into it. So I look forward to like this new medium coming out where you have small organizations or big organizations or single people that are actually of substance. I do enjoy that because I feel honestly all the networks need to. I honestly feel the networks need to be bought out by Apple or Google because they have no idea what they're doing. I was just reading a story today. Like the networks had the audacity to tell. I remember reading it was something like Apple was trying to make a deal with some of the networks for like a $30 a month TV movie subscription, where, for example, it would be like Spotify for TV and movies. So you pay $30, you get access to all the TV shows and movies you want. But networks are like, well, we want to see the interface that you make. And Apple's like, no, we're not showing you that. And they're like, well, that's not going to happen. It was just like, and Apple's like, well, whatever we come up with is going to be far better than what you guys come. And these network executives for these, that control this content, the movies and TV shows, I feel like they're clueless of where the industry is going, what people want. People don't want to spend, $150 on, 60 channels. 59 of them or 56 of them, they don't even watch. They want to pick a la carte, and they missed the boat on that. And I feel like Apple and Google and the real and like Amazon, they're going to change the whole landscape of it. And I really look forward to that because then we're going to see really quality shows. And for me and you, we're going to see some really quality documentaries and stuff like that. So I look forward to that.
You may be more optimistic on that front than I. I understand networks' reluctance to jump in bed with a technology provider telling them how to run their business, but that's probably a discussion for another day. Anyway, I think we're probably at about time. We're at about an hour 15 or so, and I know you've got to get to bed here probably, so you don't show up half asleep to your exam or test tomorrow. Unless you want to recreate your fire department experience. So I guess with that being said, I suppose I'll take us out. I appreciate everybody tuning in for episode 2 of the Single Malt Strategy Podcast. I think we're at this point we're probably looking, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Jean, but I'm thinking maybe we're looking at doing this every other week. We had talked about doing it monthly, but it seems like at least at the moment, big caveat here, at the moment our schedules are open enough where we can do it every other week. So that's kind of what we're hoping to do. Some of these episodes may be recorded a bit ahead of when they post, so depending on the topics, we may not follow a straight linear path. But for the moment, we are, and this is episode 2, until we get into something more topical that maybe needs to come out the minute we record it. Anyway, I'm rambling at this point, so you should yell at me and tell me to stop. If you guys want to listen to Jean completely forgetting the name of the podcast, I'll put that at the end of the podcast, and you can hear that.
Yeah, I had a brain fart. That I was like, wait, what's the name of the podcast again?
But anyway, I appreciate everybody tuning in. Until next time, this is Matt, the Historical Gamer, saying thank you for watching and. Yeah, or not watching. Thank you for listening. Good Lord. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Have a good one, guys. See you in the next episode.